As we continue our focus on Sudan to get some insights into the ongoing stalemate, we are joined from our Pretoria studios by political analyst and economic researcher Dr. Mahdi Osman, a native of Sudan. Dr. Osman, good evening and thank you so much for joining us on The Globe.
Good evening and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to talk to your audience.
Now, Dr. Osman, firstly, let's talk about the demonstration at the Sudanese, and Saudi Arabia embassies in Pretoria today. What do you hope to achieve with this protest?
We want to send a message to the Saudi authorities that stop arming, supporting the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed is a terminology used to describe a militia, a tribal militia and ethnic militia in Darfur that committed crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide in Darfur since 2005. The term Janjaweed in Arabic, it is a jinn and Jaweed. Jaweed is a jawad, is a horse. So the literal meaning of it is a devil riding a horse. Now they have changed these horses by Toyota cars, and now they have machine guns, and all this has been provided by Saudi Arabia in exchange of Sudanese mercenaries, or these militiamen fight in Yemen in favor to protect the Saudi Arabia.
Dr. Osman, let's speak about now the stalemate that's taking place in Sudan. Sudan protest movement has accepted an Ethiopian roadmap for a civilian-led transitional government. And on the other hand, the TMC, which is the military council, has rejected this roadmap. Why is the TMC rejecting this roadmap? Because now everyone wants a solution to ensure that Sudan moves forward from the stalemate.
The TMC is rejecting this movement or this initiative submitted by the Ethiopian authorities and supported by IJAD and the African Union and the European Union, because from the first day they are not supporting this revolution and they are not part of it. This is a big fallacy and this is a big trick that when they failed to support Omar al-Bashir or to protect him or to continue his regime, they resort to plan B, and they said to him, please step aside and we will make a good exit, a decent exit for you. You can submit your resignation and go to Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, or even Sultanate of Oman, to your old allies and to your all supporters. But because we cannot stop this revolution, now millions and millions are took to the streets and they are rejecting your power and calling for your falling down. They said to him, we can no longer protect you and we don't want to fall with you and to go with jail with you, so we will go to plan B, which was already prepared long years ago, and that they replaced him by his vice president and minister of defense. And also the demonstrators said, no, we don't want to change Omar al-Bashir in person. We want the regime to be changed into a civilian democratic government. So now, they brought the second line supporters of Omar al-Bashir, the generals, Burhan and Hemeti, and they put them in Hawa. Unfortunately, this trick has been successful for a short period of time, and now by rejecting this initiative of power sharing, they just showing their basic objective, the continuation of the old regime with different faces. That's all.
Now, Dr. Osman, the TMC wants the AU and Ethiopian authorities to unify their efforts. Now, this is to mediate between the two sides, and they want these these parties, the Ethiopian authorities and the AU, to work together to unify both parties, which is the TMC and the protest movement. In the same breath, they're rejecting this. Now, just speaking of the proposals that has been put on the table by the Ethiopian authorities, is the fact that there should be a 15-member council and made up of 7 of TMC members as well as 7 of the protest movement civilians, and then an independent consultant who'll sort of be a mediator. Why do you think there's still rejection? On the one hand, the civilian protest movement seemingly is receptive to this being put on the table. Why the insistence by the TMC not to relent? What is it that is holding them back?
They are rejecting this because their first plan and their initial plan and their plan for now is just to keep the power for themselves. You know, all these saying, these are delaying tactics playing by the TMC. No, we have been negotiating for almost 2 months, if not more. And every time they come with a different story, saying that this is an Ethiopian initiative. It is not an African Union initiative. It is not IGAD initiative. We want them to merge it. Do you think Ethiopians, the Ethiopian authority and the African Union and the IGAD and the European Union, they didn't coordinate and submit a unified initiative? I don't think they did so. They are professional and they know politicians and they know what to submit. It is not a piecemeal, but the Military Transitional Council, MTC, is just playing a delaying tactic, and they just want to abort the revolution, and now they are hijacking it.
Now, how has the protest movement been continuing to come together and sort of continue with their protests? Internet services have been cut off. They have no access to internet service, where they were able to mobilize people and to ensure that they all congregate at one particular venue or at different venues. Now, what we've seen is smaller groupings, people, standing outside their properties or, coming together or walking past each other and then joining the protest movement to whatever point. How are they able to come together and continue with the civilian movement now where, internet services are down and seemingly there's only one person on the civilian movement side who has internet access, and that's the attorney, the lawyer, I think it's Abdel Hassan. How is this working?
First of all, if there is a will, there is a way. If there is a will, there is a way. And also, disconnecting internet services, this is a violation of freedom of expression. And this human right is explicitly expressed and stipulated in the International Covenant for Human and Political, for Civilian and Political Rights, signed in 1948. So it is almost 100 years ago. I say again, if there is a will, there is a way. And we had a similar revolution in October 1964, more than 50 years ago. We overthrew a military dictatorship of Aboud in October 1964. And then we did it again in April 1985, 34 years ago. At that time, there were no internet connections, there were no telephone mobiles, and people managed to continue their demonstration and to throw over Omar Ibrahim Aboud and to throw over General Jafar Numeri. And now people without the internet, they know, they have their tricks and their tactics, and they know how to go about it. And the revolution will continue, and we are going to have a very big march and demonstration all over the Sudan, and particularly in Khartoum, and that is on the 30th of June 2019. Just 5 days ahead, we will have this big demonstration, and we will show to the world that the Sudanese people are adamant to have a civilian rule, a democratic rule, constitutional governance.
Dr. Osman, UN Human Rights Head Michelle Bachelet has come out and stated that the Sudanese authorities must grant human rights monitors access to the countries, with them receiving reports of hundreds of people losing their lives during this protest, this civil protest, and the repression, and restore the internet connection. As you've mentioned, it is a human right, and this has been cut off. Do you think that the TMC will allow human rights advocates into the country to assess the situation and give report to the rest of the world with regards to exactly what's taking place on the ground in Sudan?
Already they have rejected and they refused for the delegation from the human rights in Geneva to come and investigate the atrocities and the human rights violations in Sudan, and they will not allow it. And they are dictators and they don't care. They said the Omar Bashir has been inducted for more than 10 years. What has happened? Nothing has happened. He was visiting all the countries. Even he was meeting the Secretary General of the United States, Mr. Guterres, His Excellency Guterres, in Ethiopia 1 year ago. So they don't care for the international community or for the regional community, because they know that this international community and the regional community, they just they don't have teeth, or they don't have power to force the government to do anything. So they are sure that they will do. And imagine that they are not politically educated, well educated, and they are not well educated, and they are just generals and dictators, and they think that by power and by weapons they are getting from Saudi Arabia and getting from other countries, and with diplomatic support from these countries, they can continue governing the Sudan as Omar Bashir has governed it by iron fist for 30 years. So
now,
they don't care.
Dr. Osman, as we wrap up very quickly, in terms of the TMC, do you think that they will relent power and relinquish power and accept the mediation by Ethiopia, IGAD, the AU, and interest from the international community? You just mentioned that they don't care, but at some point in time, something has to give.
Yes, every dictator had never give power willingly. They must be forced to do that. To the last moment, they will continue resisting. But the will of the people at the end of the day will force them to relinquish power and to transfer it to a civilian government. And at that time, even what the offer now they declined by having 7 military officers or generals in the civilian sovereign council, even that they are not going to get it, and they will regret that one day. The force of the people, we need the international community, the regional community to put more pressure. But the final responsibility is on the shoulders of the Sudanese people, who are supposed, or they must come out in droves and in millions, and from different cities come to Khartoum and campaign in front of the palace in the union buildings of Sudan, in front of the palace, they call it the Jamhuri Palace in Sudan, the Republican Palace in Sudan, and sit there and continue their peaceful demonstration, continue their peaceful sit-in, and put the country in stalemate. They can renew their civil disobedience, their public strike, and demonstrations and picketings all over the world, and then all over parts of the Sudan. And definitely they have to surrender and they have to go to jail, and this will be, this is what is going to happen.
Dr.
Because
Osman,
when people want democracy and civilian rule, they will get it. They will get it. One word I want to say, I want to appeal again to the government of South Africa to support our struggle because it is fair and just. We are struggling against a compound apartheid regime in Sudan, a regime that had been discriminating against women, discriminating against non-Muslims, discriminating against non-Arabs, discriminating against non-political affiliators and supporters of the regime. So we are facing a compound apartheid regime. Please support us in the name of solidarity, in the name of Pan-Africanism. I said this before and I am saying it again. We don't want the African Union shared values which is represented in the African governance architecture to be just a rhetoric, slogans and hollow words without a real work.
Dr. Osman, thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for now. That is political analyst and economic researcher Dr. Mahdi Osman joining us there via our Pretoria studios.